A classic which I have to remember Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. Hello people, this is Sonali, the Melodramatic Bookworm. If you've been here before, welcome back, and if you're new to my channel, welcome to the Melodramatic Bookworm family. Also welcome to episode 25 of Coffee Talk with the Melodramatic Bookworm, and I decided to combine this with a recommendations video that I was asking you about on the community tab about whether or not you wanted recommendations in a long form video or in a short video, but you guys voted for a long form video, so here I am. And I will be giving you so many book and author recommendations in this video, but obviously these books will be for the prompts of DramaQueenAthon for each particular prompt. I mean, you can put some of the books from the first prompt into either the second or the third. So there are so many books that I want to talk to you about, so many authors that I want to talk to you about. But first, as per Coffee Talk tradition, we are going to talk about books that I'm currently reading and then move on to these recommendations. So first of all, I need to take a sip. Oh, that's hot. Okay, this is the only book that I will be reading by male authors during this month because I started it in February, and that was, I'm about 55 pages in, just finished the first part, the first 3 chapters, and I'm really loving it so far, especially because how just sweet Devi is, and it's like a whole commentary on society as a whole. And I'm doing a vlog for this. I don't know when that will come out. I'm thinking April, but let's see how it goes. The other 2 books that I'm reading are Kindle editions. First is House of Stone by Nobuo Rosa Shuma, and this is a story of a boy who has gone missing, but a renter in that boy's house is now trying to ingratiate himself into the family to learn the family secrets, and he literally calls the lost boy's dad as his stepdad. I'm only about 6% in, so I can't say more than that, but it's just, it has that tang of creepiness right off the bat, and I don't know how the rest of the book is going to go, but I'm really interested to see. And I must say that I learned a lot about Zimbabwe in just this first 6%, so I'm really excited to see what else I can learn in the rest of the book. And the last book that I'm reading is, I had to recollect for a moment, but that is Lost Kingdom by Laurel Black. This was a January release if I'm not mistaken, and I was very lucky to have gotten the ARC for this, but I still haven't been able to read it because of various reasons, circumstances. And this is a fantasy about lost kingdoms and lost tribes and oppression. It's like a real world story but in a fantasy setting, and I am really enjoying it so far, but I haven't been able to go back to the story even though it's been a while since I started it. But I'm hoping that March will be the month in which I actually finish reading it and that I can tell you what it's all about. Okay, I haven't spoken for this quickly in a long time. Yeah. Okay, so now on to my book recommendations for DramaQueenAthon. Okay, so DramaQueenAthon, just as a refresher, DramaQueenAthon is a readathon that I host every March, but it's also the name of every readathon that I ever host. But basically it started out as a Women's Month readathon, so I brought it back this year as well. And there are only 3 rules for DramaQueenAthon. First is that you have to read only books by women authors for this readathon. Second is that you have to read at least 1 book by an Indian author. And third is that you have to read at least 1 book by a transgender woman. So in this video, I will be giving you so many book recommendations. I'll basically be gushing over some of my favorite books over the past couple of years. I mean, I cannot go through my whole history because there's way too much content for that and not enough that I can fit into like whatever this is going to be. So yes, let's get on with it. So prompt number 1 is read only books by women authors. And where do I even start? I know exactly where to start because my last read for February was a book that just killed me. And that book was A Woman Is No Man by Itafrum, and this is about 2 women 18 years apart, a mother and her daughter, each grappling with their own lives, the way women are seen in Palestinian culture, how they are expected to get married as soon as they turn 18, they are expected to have children, to look after the house, and how both of these women are looking for the betterment of their lives, but somehow they seem to get stuck. Things are about to get way too complicated. And I loved this book. I was so enraged the whole time, but it was just a window into a woman's life in Palestinian culture, and just read it. Next is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia, and this is a horror book that I did a whole vlog about, and I was brave enough to finish reading this in the dead of the night. That book is creepy as hell, and it does what Silvia Moreno Garcia intends it to do. Love the book. Go read it. If you'd like to go watch that vlog, then I'll leave the link here as well as in the description box below. Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. Basically, this whole book is a peep into black women's lives. It's lovely, it's gritty, it just shows how society is quick to point fingers at women, and how black culture is, how black society is. And this is one book that you shouldn't miss. Next is What You Are Looking For Is in the Library by Michiko Aoyama, and translated into English from the Japanese by Alison Watts. And this is the loveliest, the most heartwarming, the most motivational book ever, and I absolutely loved it. I read this in January, and this was my first favorite book of 2024, and it is one of my favorite books of all time. Wholesome, gooey warmth in this book that I just can't stop gushing about it. I did a full video review of this book. If you'd like to go check that out, link here as well as in the description box below. Next is Kitchen by Banana Yoshimoto, and this is a story of grief, death, bereavement, tragedy, and finding companionship in grief. And this could be termed as sad, but it is also filled with longing and warmth, and it talks about grief as a companion in itself, about how it is inevitable, but also it shows you how you deal with it. And love this book. Okay, next is a book that I just can't seem to stop talking about, and with good reason too, and that book is, hold on, it's a big one, In the Language of Remembering by Aanchal Malhotra. You've seen me gush about it, you've seen me rave about it, you've seen me talk so much about it because I did a full vlog for this book last year, and I shed tears because Aanchal Malhotra has a way of writing that will clutch at your heart. And when she talks about people and their experiences and their coming generations, their experiences about partition and the effect that it had, and I wrote in it, I cried over it. It was just like I couldn't let go, and even now I keep going back to this book time and time again. Next is In Other Words by Jhumpa Lahiri. In this book, Jhumpa Lahiri talks about language and the effect that it had on her, and about the impact it can have on different people, can change from person to person. I read this at a time when I was going through something of that myself. I totally understood what she was talking about, and it is one of the most beautiful pieces of literature ever, and I don't say beautiful about non-fiction that much. So having read that book, I fell in love, all the way in love with Jhumpa Lahiri, and she is now one of my favorite authors of all time. So if you have the chance, if you get the chance, please read In Other Words. It's one of her best. Next is Ace by Angela Chen. In this book, Angela Chen has interviewed different people, different asexual people, and she talks about asexuality and explains to us what exactly asexuality is. She busts some myths, and she does it in a sort of academic manner. The writing is very academic, but it is one of the most important books ever, and I feel like everybody should read it. Next is Minority Tale by Adania Shibli, and this is a Palestinian author who writes about the Palestinian story in two timelines. It's a very short book. In one timeline, just after the Nakba in 1948 or 49, she writes about Israeli soldiers who are turning everyone out of villages, and they are now camped in the desert, and how they come upon an Arab woman and how they rape and kill her. And 25 years later, there's this journalist who comes to know that on the same day of her birthday 25 years ago this has happened. So she takes it upon herself and she to try and write a story about it, but history repeats, and it is understated, it is nuanced, it is matter of fact, but it will just whack you across the head like a hammer. And this is one whack that we all need, because look at the situation. It's just so fucking frustrating. Every time I see the news, I just Imogen, obviously, by Becky Albertalli, and this is about a girl who is like one of the straightest people on earth, but when she goes to meet her best friend at her best friend's college, she starts to realize some things about herself. This was one of my favorite reads of 2023. I absolutely loved it because it shows that queer experience is not just one track. Every person has their own experience than the next, but it was also like very validating even for a straight person like me, and I absolutely loved it. I love Becky Albertalli for writing this book. And then Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. This is Michelle Zauner's memoir about her relationship with her mother and losing her mother to cancer. This just broke me. The manner in which Michelle Zauner wrote this memoir, it's just, you can feel the raw pain from within the pages, because it's just telling you that no matter what your relationship with your parents is, they are still your parents and you will still be heartbroken if something happens to them. And to see her relationship with her mother, see her talking to her mother, making allowances for the strict tiger mom behavior, it's just, I understand you, girl. I mean, I might not empathize with you, but I understand you. Next is The Vitals by Tracy Sorensen, and this is Tracy Sorensen's memoir in which she talks about her cancer, her peritoneal cancer, I think, and it's not her telling the story, it's her organs telling it, and it is one of the most inventively written memoirs I've ever read, because there's a mix of all genres in here. There's a romance going on somewhere, there's a thriller, there's a literary fiction, and it's just brilliantly written, and it is one that I feel like everybody should read because of how entertaining it is, even though the subject itself is so heartbreaking. And then I recommend anything by R.F. Kuang, the Poppy War series, which I don't have copies of. My copies are back in India, and this one, which I lost my mind over. You've watched me lose my mind over this in that vlog. If you want to go watch that again or for the first time, doesn't matter. The link to that will be here as well as in the description box below. Go check it out. This talks about racism in the publishing industry. It talks about white privilege and the lengths that some authors will go to keep their clout and to just steamroll other authors. And going by the number of things that have come to light in the past, couple or few months. In fact, R.F. Kuang was on to something here, because she not only reflected the past, she also somehow predicted the future. And then another of her books is another book that I lost my mind over, which was Babel. I've heard so many people call it Babel, but I'll still keep calling it Babel because it just sounds right to me. But this is also a book that I have done a full vlog for last year itself, and if you'd like to go check that out, link will be in the description box below, because I don't think I can add another card, whatever. But this is a story of colonization, and she has so many opinions on this. I want to reread this book, but there are many other books that I need to read first. Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers by Jessie Q. Sutanto, and this is the story of an old Chinese auntie who takes it upon herself to solve a murder, and then she has advice for murderers. She is overbearing, she has strict rules, and she has an opinion about everything, and you just want to just shake her and say, please just shush for a second and sit down. But then by the end of the book, you will also feel like all the feelings of love and protectiveness over her. Vera Wong is one character who's just yeah, such a strong-willed pillar in her unto herself that it was just a fabulous experience and all. Then comes a memoir by actress Constance Wu, and that is Making a Scene. And in this, Constance Wu talks about her experiences growing up, her experiences about how she became an actor, her experiences in the industry, about how people treated her. And it started off as something very childlike. It was just like, why is she making this tone inflection? And then when she goes forward with the chapter, she gets to a point, she gets to a crescendo that sort of rains down on you, and it is amazing to hear. Listen to it as an audiobook. I did that, and that's why I'm recommending it so hard to you. Next is Boats on Land by Janice Pariyat, and this is a collection of short stories set in Meghalaya and centers the experiences and life experiences of the Meghalayan people. It is a very quick read, but it will also give you a glimpse into the lives, the religious experiences, the political leanings about some of the people over there. And it was great, and it's one book that I haven't talked about much on my channel, but I feel like I need to recommend it wholeheartedly so that you will go ahead and pick it up. I've also heard that Janice Pariyat's previous book called The Nine-Chambered Heart is very, very good, and I haven't gotten it yet, but I am looking forward to getting it and reading it sometime. I can't talk. Next are two books by one of my favorite authors of all time. These are her only two books so far in fiction in the English language, and those are The Mountain Sing and Dust Child by Yuen Pan Kwe Mai. The Mountain Sing is set in 3 timelines, I think, and it spans the Vietnam War, just before the Vietnam War and towards after the end of it, and it talks about war and how it affects one particular family, and the changes that happens in society, the changes that happens in a person's thinking, the things that a person is forced to make as someone who lives in a war-stricken country, and everything that happens after. It's just one of the most... I don't even have a word to describe it, because the author's writing is kind and compassionate. These are two words that I always use in conjunction with her. And this writing, this kind and compassionate writing, flows over to Dust Child, where she is talking about people who are looking into their past. There's a war veteran who's coming from America to Vietnam, and he is looking for closure of some sorts because he has trauma from that war. And then there's a man and his wife and 2 children. The man is looking for his father. He is Vietnamese American, but children of Vietnamese mothers and American fathers are looked down upon in Vietnamese society because, like, cavorting with the enemy and all of that. But he is trying to find a way to get to America so that he can look for his father. So these two, in combination with a past, when there's a story brewing in 1970, how all of this comes together forms this entire story. And the author has a brilliant way of writing. The Mountain Sing remains my favorite of her works, but Dust Child is also equally compelling. And these are 2 books that you should definitely read. I have said that you should definitely read this author's works before, so consider this another gentle reminder. Next is Anything by Nikita Gill. Like, I keep saying this over and over again, but Nikita Gill is one poetess who I just can't stop gushing over. Every time someone says Nikita Gill, I'm like, my favorite. And her works are books that I will always recommend. This is the only book of hers that I have here. All remaining are back in India, but I'm so lucky to have it because this was one of the most beautiful books ever, like every Nikita Gill book. And I am just itching to go and start reading this, but I have a March TBR to get to. But any of her works, pick them up, you're set. Then Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay. In this, Roxane Gay talks about feminism and the different types of feminism there is in the world. She also dissects certain famous movies and scenes and talks about how one particular thing about a movie can be so widely loved, but when you look at it, when you really look at it, it can be so problematic and so misogynistic in the whole sense. And she gives a few examples. Then she talks about some authors who are blatantly misogynistic and some who are, I don't think they intentionally do so. And she tells us in the end that, see, feminism is not one size fits all. There are as many ways of being a feminist as there are of people, and that is something that has stuck by me since I read this book last year. The Daughters of Madurai by Rajashree Warrier. And just now, as I was thinking about what this book is about, it reminded me of A Woman Is No Man, and how both of these books are not that different. It's just that while A Woman Is No Man centers Palestinian women, this centers Indian women, and there's a thread, there's a very thick rope that connects both of these women. And the Daughters of Madurai is again the story of two daughters. They are in Sydney, Australia, and they have to go back because the daughter's father's father is ill, and the mother has to now confront a lot of her past. And there's a lot of sadness, there's a lot of pain, a lot of loss and grief for the other daughters who didn't make it. The way the author has corrected everything, it was just wonderfully brilliant. I mean, wonderfully brilliant in the sense that the writing is wonderful. The story itself is painful and tough to get through, but get through it, and the payoff is, it's making me emotional just thinking about it. But I did a full blog review of the book on my blog. If you'd like to go check that out, link will be in the description box below. Next is Persepolis, the complete Persepolis by Marjan Satrapi. This is a memoir told in graphic novel format, and this is about the author's life in Iran during and after the Islamic Revolution, how things changed, and the changes that she had to make personally in order to make sure that she remained safe, and how she went to Vienna, I think, and then her return to Tehran after that. One of my favorite books of all time, and I got sent this by Penguin Random House, and I just lost it. I have read this book twice so far, and I have loved it both times, and a third time isn't going to be any different. But this is one book that I always recommend. Next is The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan, and this is about 4 mothers and their daughters. And what is it about mother-daughter relationships, man? Okay, so this is about 4 mothers and their daughters. These are Chinese American people. The mothers have immigrated to America, and they are now raising daughters who consider themselves American because of the situation they are in, because they are growing up in America technically. We see the mother's past, we see how the daughters are struggling to come to terms with both of their identities, how they are clashing, and how they are, rebelling against their mother's thoughts and diktats and everything. And we see all of that. At the time, I thought that it wasn't very well written because I felt like there was a lot of vagueness to it. But over time, when I look back on it, I just think that it is one of the most compelling stories of a mother-daughter relationship ever. Kim Jeong, born 1982 by Cho Nam-ju and translated into English by Jamie Chang. This is about Kim Jeong, born 1982, and in this we follow her life, everything that she has to go through in society, the sexism that she has to encounter with the men in her life, with the men in her office, in the expectations that people have as a woman, and how the men in her office treat her, from the little microaggressions to the blatant sexism. Everything is covered in this book, and it was just one of those books that enraged me. It is one book that will show you what it is like being a woman in this world. The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. This is a short story, and in this the main character is unwell. She is banished to her bedroom. Her husband thinks that there's nothing wrong with her. She's just making up things or something of that sort. And then she starts seeing the yellow wallpaper across from her bed moving. She starts seeing shapes in it. It's a clear indication that her mental health is not okay, and to nobody taking her seriously. And I didn't even know what to say. Like, I'm connecting the dots, and I'm like, Charlotte Perkins Gilman knew exactly what she was writing. And then 84 Charing Cross Road by Helene Hanff, and this is the author's correspondence with a London bookseller, and it is one of the most heartwarming and heartbreaking and hilarious things at the same time. I don't know how she managed to do this, and how their such correspondence just filled me with warmth and the like, but it's brilliant. Next is All My Rage by Sabah Tahir. This is about two Muslim teenagers in America, Salahuddin and Noor, and how they are going through so many things at the same time. They are trying to get their lives on track after things happen to them, certain circumstances, and how they are also not talking to each other because there has been a fight, but somehow each other's circumstances, each other's situations wake something up and they are trying to be there for each other. And it is one of the most brilliant YA books to ever exist out there, and I cannot believe the hate that it is getting. I saw someone say this, that if a book like this is getting this much hate, then that means that the people who are advocating to ban it or who are advocating against the book, they are afraid of change to the status quo. They are afraid of any change happening to their privileged lives, any change happening that will affect them, that will make them change how they are living. And I was like, yes, that makes sense. But All My Rage, please read it. It's amazing. Next is Tin Man by Sarah Winman, and this is a story of two boys and a girl, and the main character Michael, one of the boys, he is trying to find a footing in life, especially in relation to Ellis, who's the other guy who is now married to Annie, and Michael thinking that he doesn't know where he belongs. And this book is so much about men and emotions and what society allows men to feel, and it is one of the most beautiful books I read in 2022, and it's just breaks my heart just thinking about it, because it is still quiet in the way it talks about all of these things, in how it talks about hope and hopelessness. It leaves a mark on your heart, and this is one book that I recommend you definitely pick up. And if you have never read Sarah Winman before, let this be your introduction to Sarah Winman, because it was mine, and there has been no looking back. And then Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Maria Machado, and this is a collection of short stories in which Carmen Maria Machado centers female experiences in different ways. Like, she doesn't just use a straightforward mainstream way of talking about women and women's rights and everything else. She just brings a twist, a different kind of twist to each story that will still resonate with you so much. The writing is a little bit too flowery and stunted, and it's like a combination of the two, but just stick with it and you will see the beauty that comes with the story. Sadie by Courtney Summers. This is a creepy book. This is, oh my god, you need to listen to this on audio if you can. This is one of the most heartwarming but creepy books ever. This is about Sadie and her quest to find her sister's killer, and we see this story in two perspectives. One is from Sadie's perspective, and one is from the people who are investigating her disappearance. And it is just like, oh my god, wow, just read it. Like, I won't say anything else, just read Sadie. The Loneliness of Hira Barua by Arupa Patangya Kalita, translated into English from the Assamese, I think. And in this, the author talks about Assamese life and centers Assamese experiences. It feels like home, and it feels like you are talking to your neighbor while you're reading this book. It feels like your neighbor is telling this story to you, and that is why whenever I think Indian authors, I recommend this book. It is a collection of short stories, each centering different people, different experiences, but uniting all of them under one huge umbrella of being Assamese. And then any book by Elizabeth Gilbert, and the book that I have here is Big Magic, and this is about creative living beyond fear. And I like this book, but my favorite of Elizabeth Gilbert's books is Eat, Pray, Love, which talks about her own experiences and about finding herself. She went on a sort of a world tour to Italy, India and Indonesia to find herself after her divorce, and things started becoming messy for her, and I absolutely loved it. One of my favorite books of all time. There are two other books that I want to recommend, but I haven't read them, so I can't really call them recommendations, but I will be reading this book this month. So maybe wait for the DramaQueenAthon vlog, because that is coming, to see what I think about this, or wait for the March reading wrap up. Either one of those two. And the other one is The Year of Magical Thinking by Joan Didion, in which Joan Didion talks about her experience with grief, and it's a memoir, and I have heard so many amazing things about this book. I even borrowed it from the library, but I never got around to reading it for various reasons, but I own a copy now, so I'm hoping to read it ASAP. Okay, so now on to prompt 2, which is to read books by Indian women authors. And you know who's on top of that list? Jhumpa Lahiri. Roman Stories I've read earlier this year, liked it. I didn't love it, it's not my favorite Lahiri, but I liked it. Translating Myself and Others, read in 2022, absolutely loved it. Interpreter of Maladies is one that I will be reading this month. I have The Lowland as well, but that's not on my radar anytime soon. Books that I have read before by her are The Clothing of Books, Whereabouts, in other words, Namesake. Yeah, if you are looking for an Indian woman author, look no further than Jhumpa Lahiri. Like, I will always recommend her first and foremost to you. Then Arupa Patangya Kalita, like I was talking to you about The Loneliness of Hira Barua, she is also one author that you can read for this prompt. Janice Pariyar with Boats on Land and The Nine-Chambered Heart. Aanchal Malhotra, the book is here, I'm not going to remove it again, with In the Language of Remembering, Remnants of a Separation, and the Book of Everlasting Things. I still have to read the Book of Everlasting Things, but I will get to it this year, that much I'm sure. Anuja Chandramouli, she is a mythological fiction writer, and she takes people and figures from Hindu mythology and she expands on them. She gives them a detailed story. Some of her books include Ganga, Mohini, Arjuna, Abhimanyu. She also writes about historical figures, and one of them is Muhammad bin Tughlaq, who I have had the book for a while, which she was kind enough to send me a review copy, but I haven't been able to read it. But she writes very beautifully, and she is one author that I would definitely recommend. And then Janaki Lenin, who is a wildlife conservationist, and she writes books about that, and her book My Husband and Other Animals was also one such. Her writing is about nature and about animals and snakes and everything, and she talks about how we should be kinder to nature, and it is one of the most interesting books I've ever read, that's for sure. And then Nikita Gill, I won't repeat myself because I have spoken already quite a lot about her work, but I'm just putting this out there. She's Indian British or British Indian. And then Rimli Sengupta, who is the author of Karno's Daughter, one of my favorite books of all time. It is the story of a Calcutta maid and how she has two different lives in order to supplement her income as well as to supplement her life. I loved it. I always recommend it, and here I am recommending it again. And then Aparna Upadhyay Sanyal, she has written Circus Folks and Village Freaks, which was a book that I read in 2019 if I'm not mistaken, and I absolutely loved it. It's a collection of 18 short stories about people who are not considered normal. It was one of the most well-written, witty books that I read at the time, and I still consider it to be so. Her second book, Instruments of Torture, is now out, and I will be reading it this month. It was not on my March TBR, but I will be reading it this month, and you'll see a review from me very soon. Karuna Ezra Parikh, who wrote The Heart Asked Pleasure First. This is also centers on a Pakistani and an Indian family, I think. It's been quite a while since I read it, but it is one that I really like the writing of, so I'm obviously here recommending it to you. Then Koral Dasgupta, who writes in beautiful prose. Sometimes it's a little too extra, too purple, but she writes about women from Hindu mythology, Hindu epics like Ahalya, Kunti, Draupadi, Mandodari, and she has a theme going and she does it very well in my opinion. Like I said, the prose can get too purple, but it's like worth it. And then Chitra Banerjee Devakaruni, whose book Independence I'll be reading this month and you'll be seeing a subscriber pick vlog for, and her book The Palace of Illusions was one of my favorites at the time when I read it. I think I read this in 2018. And then The Forest of Enchantments wasn't that great, but she has a theme going where she takes women characters and elevates them to a different level. So this is one author that I will recommend very cautiously because some writings can be a little really. And then Anuja Chauhan, who writes like typical Indian English stories. Like there are people who are talking English in her books, and it is some of the most entertaining things I've ever read. My favorite of her works is Those Pricey Thakur Girls, and I had so much fun reading it. It was a 5-star read for me. So if you're looking to read something of this sort, then Anuja Chauhan is one author that you should definitely turn to. Those Pricey Thakur Girls, The House That BJ Built, Zoya Factor, Bars, Club You to Death, these are some of her books, and I feel like you will have a lot of fun while reading any of these books for that matter. Then Dharini Bhaskar, who's written These Are Bodies Possessed by Light. It was nominated for the JCB prize in 2020 if I'm not mistaken, and I really wanted this book to win but it didn't. But Dharini Bhaskar has a very beautiful way of writing, and I feel like you should definitely go check her book out. And there is another book coming from her this year, I think, if I'm not mistaken. The announcement was made very recently. Then is Deepa Anapara, who wrote Gin Patrol on the Purple Line. That was also nominated for JCB Prize 2020, and it was very heartwarming and heartbreaking at the same time. And you see the lives of the people on the streets in Delhi and how they have to slum it out, and it was very good, and I really liked the writing, and that's why I'm recommending it to you. And last but not the least, grandmother Sudha Murthy. Like, I don't think I have to explain anything because she has a way with words. Very simply, very beautifully, she puts forward tales and stories that you will feel like you are listening to your grandmother tell you them. And prompt number 3 is read books by trans women authors. And half of these I haven't read. I will be reading a couple of these this month. I'm still recommending them to you because I have heard so many amazing things about them that I'm like, I don't want to be the only one who's taking these recommendations. I want to share them with you. And the first book is The Truth About Me by A. Revati. This is about A. Revati's own life and her experiences of being a hijra in India. Then comes Red Lipstick by Lakshmi. This wasn't a book that I was very impressed with, not because the writing is bad or something, but because there were issues that went down unfiltered, and intersectional feminism was not one of them. The very archaic things about what a woman is supposed to be, what a woman is supposed to aspire to, all of that was still very archaic. So when you're talking about things like this, you just have to step up a little bit. Why are you shitting down on women? Like, you are a woman. Why are you shitting down on women? So that was something like that. But it is still worth it to read Lakshmi's autobiography. I think you should read it anyway. But the next book is The Transition Baby by Tori Peters. This is about 3 people, trans and cis, and pregnancy that changes all of their lives. This is what I think I said in my March TBR as well, if I'm not mistaken. This is one book that I will be reading this month for this prompt. Next is Light from Uncommon Stars by Raika Aoki, and it has become available at the library, but I haven't been able to go there yet because of various reasons again. But this is a queer science fiction novel, and I'm so looking forward to bringing it home and reading it. I Am Afraid of Men by Vivek Shraya, and I think that pretty much says everything that needs to be said about what the book is about. Yes, You Are Trans Enough by Mia Violet. I wish I had more recommendations for you, but I'm also on the same journey, and I am making a conscious effort now to read more of these books. So this DramaQueenAthon is as helpful for me as it is, I hope, for you. So I am trying to read more of these books, and once I do, you know I will get them out for you, and you know I will recommend them to you. So those were all the book recommendations I had for you for the 3 prompts of the DramaQueenAthon. Oh, my throat is gone. Off. But what did you think of this video? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Did you take away any book recommendations from this for DramaQueenAthon? Tell me if you're participating. Please leave a comment down below. But what do you think of it all? Have you read any of these books? Will you be picking any of these books up for DramaQueenAthon, or for anything, just your normal reading for that matter? Or what books are you picking up for DramaQueenAthon, and what books are you reading in March? Do you have any book recommendations for these particular prompts? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. If you like this video, please like it and share it to spread the word. And if you like my content and would like to see more from me, don't forget to hit subscribe and click on the bell icon beside the subscribe button to get notified as and when I post new videos. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Until next time, keep reading, keep watching, and add melodrama to your life.